This is the story of the weapon that saved Byzantium, and how losing it destroyed them. 674 AD, Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire faced annihilation. An Arab fleet of 1,800 ships surrounded the city. 80,000 soldiers prepared to storm the walls. The Byzantine navy was outnumbered 3-1. The Arabs had conquered Syria, Egypt, North Africa, and Persia in just 40 years. Nothing could stop them except the Byzantines had a weapon, a secret weapon, something the Arabs had never seen, something that would save the city. Save the empire and terrify the world for 800 years. It was called Greek fire, and it changed everything. The Arab ships approached. Byzantine galleys sailed out to meet them. The Arabs expected a conventional naval battle. Arrows, spears, ramming. Instead, the Byzantine ships unleashed hell. Liquid fire shot from bronze tubes mounted on their bows, streams of flame 50 feet long. The fire hit the Arab ships and they exploded. Wood, sails, ropes, men, everything burned. And the fire couldn't be extinguished. Water made it worse. The flames spread across the water's surface, burning, floating, consuming everything. The Arab sailors jumped overboard to escape. The fire followed them into the sea. They burned alive in the water, screaming. The Arab fleet panicked. Ships crashed into each other trying to flee. More caught fire. Within hours, the most powerful naval force in the world was destroyed. The siege was broken. Constantinople was saved. And the secret of Greek fire became the Byzantine Empire's most valuable asset. For 800 years, they guarded it. For 800 years, enemies feared it. And then one day, they lost the secret, and the empire fell. Let's go back to the beginning. 330 AD, Emperor Constantine founded Constantinople, the new capital of the Roman Empire, built on the site of ancient Byzantium. Strategic location controls the Bosphorus Strait, the gateway between Europe and Asia, between the Mediterranean and the Black Sea. Whoever controls Constantinople controls trade, controls naval power, controls the crossroads of the world. Constantine built walls, massive walls, 40 feet high. 30 feet thick, double-layered with towers every 60 feet, the greatest fortifications in the ancient world. For 1,000 years those walls would hold, but walls alone don't win wars. You need offense. You need the ability to destroy enemies before they reach your walls. The Byzantine Empire faced threats from every direction. Persians to the east, Germanic tribes to the north, Slavs and Bulgars to the northwest, and after 630 AD the biggest threat, the Arabs. The rise of Islam created a military juggernaut. Arab armies conquered with terrifying speed. 634 to 640 they took Syria and Palestine from Byzantium. 640 to 642 they conquered Egypt, Byzantium's richest province. 647 to 698 they took North Africa. By 650 the Byzantine Empire had lost 2/3 of its territory, half its tax base. Most of its food supply. Constantinople was next. The Arabs knew it, the Byzantines knew it, and in 674 the Arab fleet came. But before we get to that siege, we need to understand Byzantine naval warfare. The Byzantine navy was the most advanced in the Mediterranean. Their primary warship was the dromon, a galley with 2 banks of oars, fast, maneuverable, armed with a bronze siphon mounted on the bow. The siphon was a tube, like a cannon barrel, connected to a pump system below deck, operated by a crew called siphonators. These men were specialists, trained in secrecy, sworn to silence. They mixed the fuel, loaded the pump, and unleashed the fire. The exact composition of Greek fire is still unknown today. The Byzantines guarded the formula with fanatical secrecy. Only a handful of people knew it: the emperor, the head siphonator, a few imperial chemists. The recipe was passed down orally, never writ, or if written in code. What we know from historical accounts is this: Greek fire was a liquid, probably a mixture of petroleum, quicklime, sulfur, and naphtha. Maybe saltpeter. Maybe pine resin, heated under pressure. When expelled through the siphon, it ignited on contact with air. The flame was intense, yellow-white, over 1,000 degrees Celsius, and it burned on water. That was the key. Normal fire goes out when wet. Greek fire didn't. It floated on the surface, burned on top of the waves. You couldn't extinguish it with water. In fact, water made it spread. Panicked sailors would throw water on the flames. The fire would expand, consume more of the ship. More of the men. The only way to extinguish Greek fire was to smother it. Sand, dirt, vinegar, urine, desperate measures, usually too late. 674 AD. The Arab siege began. The Arab commander Mu'awiyah had 1,800 ships. The Byzantine navy had maybe 600. The Arabs were confident. They had conquered empires, defeated the Persians, taken half of Byzantium already. Constantinople would fall, then Europe, then the world. April 674. The Arab fleet entered the Bosphorus. The Byzantines sailed out to meet them. The Arabs prepared for conventional combat. Ramming, boarding, close quarters fighting. Instead, the Byzantine dromons opened their siphons. Streams of liquid fire shot across the water. 50 feet, 60 feet. The flames hit the Arab ships. The sails ignited first, then the wooden hulls, then the ropes, everything flammable. Within seconds, ships were engulfed. The Arabs had never seen anything like this. Fire that flies through the air, fire that burns on water, fire that can't be stopped. Panic spread faster than the flames. Arab captains tried to retreat. But the Byzantine dromons were faster, more maneuverable. They chased the fleeing ships, sprayed more fire, the sea itself seemed to burn. The Arab sailors called it sea fire, liquid fire, the devil's weapon. They believed it was sorcery, black magic, a curse from God. The psychological impact was as devastating as the physical. Men who survive battles talk, they tell stories, and the stories of Greek fire spread across the Arab world, an unstoppable weapon. A fire that hunts you in the water, a death you cannot escape. For 4 years, the Arabs tried to take Constantinople. Every year they sent fleets. Every year Greek fire destroyed them. 678 AD, the Arabs gave up, the siege was lifted. The Byzantine Empire was saved, and Greek fire became legend. But Greek fire wasn't just used defensively. The Byzantines used it offensively too. 717 AD, the Arabs tried again, a massive invasion, 1,800 ships, 80,000 soldiers, led by Caliph Suleiman. This time they came prepared. They had studied Greek fire, learned from survivors, they tried to counter it. They coated their ships with hides soaked in vinegar. They carried barrels of sand. They trained sailors to stay calm. It didn't matter. The Byzantine Emperor Leo III unleashed the fire. The vinegar-soaked hides burned. The sand was too little, too late. The Arab fleet was annihilated again. Only 5 Arab ships escaped, out of 1,800. The rest burned or sank or were captured. 80,000 soldiers never reached the walls. Most drowned or burned or starved during the winter siege. Of the 80,000 who came, fewer than 30,000 returned home. It was one of the most decisive victories in history. Greek fire saved Constantinople, saved Europe. If the Arabs had taken Constantinople in 717, they would have pushed into the Balkans, into Italy, into Western Europe. The entire trajectory of history would have changed. But they didn't because of Greek fire, the secret weapon. And the Byzantines used it for 800 years. 821 AD, used against Thomas the Slav's rebel fleet. Victory, 941 AD, used against the Rus Vikings attacking Constantinople. Victory, 1,000 ships approached. Greek fire destroyed them. The Rus never tried again. 1043 AD, used against Bulgarian fleets. Victory, every time Constantinople was threatened by sea, Greek fire saved it. Enemies feared the Byzantine navy. Not because of numbers, not because of superior ships, because of the fire, the unquenchable fire, and the Byzantines protected the secret religiously. Anyone who revealed the formula faced execution, not just the person, their entire family. Entire villages could be destroyed for leaking information. The production facilities were inside the imperial palace, guarded by the Varangian Guard, elite warriors sworn to the emperor. The siphonators were a closed guild. Sons inherited the position from fathers. Outsiders were never trained, never allowed near the workshops. When siphonators traveled with the fleet, they were kept separate. They didn't fraternize with regular sailors. They ate separately, slept separately, lived in isolation, because they knew the secret, and the secret was power. But secrets are fragile. They depend on continuous transmission, father to son, master to apprentice, generation after generation. If the chain breaks, the knowledge is lost, and chains can break in many ways: war, plague, political purges, accident, and over time the Byzantines grew complacent. In the early years, 674 to 1000 AD, Greek fire was essential, used constantly, every major naval battle, every siege. The knowledge stayed fresh. The skills stayed sharp, but after 1050 things changed. The Byzantine Empire entered a period of relative peace at sea. The Arab threat diminished, the Rus were quiet, the Bulgarians were subjugated, naval warfare became less frequent. The siphonators had fewer opportunities to practice. The production of Greek fire slowed. Why make it if you're not using it? Why train new siphonators if there are no wars? The imperial bureaucracy saw it as an expense. Workshops required funding. Materials were expensive. Petroleum, sulfur, naphtha, all had to be imported. The costs added up, and with no immediate threat, the budget was cut. Fewer siphonators were trained, fewer batches of Greek fire were produced. The institutional knowledge began to erode. 1071, the Battle of Manzikert. The Byzantine army was destroyed by the Seljuk Turks, not a naval battle, a land battle, but the defeat was catastrophic. The emperor was captured, Anatolia was lost, the empire fractured into civil war, resources were diverted to land warfare, the navy was neglected. By 1100, the Byzantine navy was a shadow of its former self. Ships were old, crews were inexperienced, and the production of Greek fire had nearly stopped. Why? Because the empire couldn't afford it. The Seljuks controlled Anatolia, the source of many raw materials. Petroleum from the Caucasus was harder to obtain. Sulfur from Sicily was cut off by Norman invasions. The supply chains were broken, and even if they had the materials, the experts were dying. The old siphonators passed away. Their sons were not always trained. Some families left the profession, sought other work, more stable work. The guild shrank. By 1150, there were only a handful of men who knew the full formula, and they were old. 1171, Emperor Manuel I arrested Venetian merchants. We talked about this in the last video. It caused the eventual sack of Constantinople in 1204, but it also had another consequence. Venice was a source of raw materials. Venetian merchants supplied naphtha, resins, chemicals. When relations broke down, those supplies ended. the Byzantines tried to find alternatives. They couldn't. The specific grades mattered, the purity mattered, substitutes didn't work, the fire wouldn't ignite or wouldn't burn hot enough or extinguish too easily. By 1200, Greek fire production was sporadic at best. The formula still existed, a few men still knew it, but the ability to produce it reliably was gone. 1071, the Fourth Crusade sacked Constantinople. We covered this. The city was looted, the library burned, the imperial palace was ransacked, and during the chaos something was lost. The written records, if there were any hidden texts describing Greek fire, they were destroyed. The siphonators fled or were killed. The Latin Empire that replaced Byzantium had no interest in Greek fire. They didn't understand it, didn't value it. The production facilities were dismantled. The bronze siphons were melted down for the metal. The remaining stockpiles were used up or lost. By the time the Byzantines retook Constantinople in 1261, Greek fire was gone. The formula was lost. The skills were lost. The infrastructure was lost. Michael VII Palaiologos, the emperor who reclaimed the city, tried to revive it. He searched for anyone who knew the secret. A few old men claimed to remember parts. The siphonator's grandson said his grandfather told him stories, but nobody knew the complete formula. They tried to recreate it, mixed petroleum with sulfur, it burned, but not like Greek fire. It didn't stick, didn't burn on water, didn't shoot from the siphons properly. It was just regular fire, dangerous but not devastating. Not the terror weapon that had saved the empire for 800 years. The secret was lost, and the Byzantine Empire was now vulnerable. The consequences were immediate, 1260s to 1280s. The Byzantine navy struggled against Genoese and Venetian fleets. In the old days, Greek fire would have destroyed them. Now, Byzantine ships fought with conventional weapons, arrows, catapults, ramming. They often lost. 1350. The Ottoman Turks began raiding Byzantine coasts. Small fleets at first, testing defenses. The Byzantines couldn't stop them. Without Greek fire, their naval advantage was gone. The Ottomans learned that Byzantine ships were no longer terrifying. They were just ships. 1390s. The Ottomans built a navy, challenged Byzantine control of the Aegean and Black Sea, won battles, took islands, blockaded Constantinople. The Byzantines were helpless. They had numbers, they had ships, but they didn't have the weapon that mattered. 1422. Sultan Murad II besieged Constantinople by land and sea. The Byzantine navy tried to break the blockade, failed. If they had Greek fire, the Ottoman fleet would have burned. Without it, they were ordinary, ineffective. The siege failed for other reasons, but the vulnerability was clear. Constantinople could be blockaded, could be starved. The invincible city was now reachable. 1453. Sultan Mehmed II prepared the final siege. He built the largest cannons ever created, bronze monsters that fired 600-pound stone balls. He built a fortress on the Bosphorus, cut off supply routes. And he built a fleet, 126 ships, galleys, barges, transports. The Byzantine navy had 26 ships, outnumbered 5 to 1. Emperor Constantine XI knew what was coming. He appealed to the West for help, begged for ships. For soldiers, for weapons, a few came. Genoese volunteers, Venetian sailors, not enough. Constantine looked at his small navy, 26 ships against 126. In the old days, this wouldn't have mattered. Greek fire would have evened the odds, destroyed the Ottoman fleet before they reached the walls. But Greek fire was gone. The secret lost 200 years ago. The Byzantines had nothing. April 1453. The siege began. The Ottoman fleet blockaded the Golden Horn. Byzantine ships tried to break through. Failed. Conventional naval combat, no fire, no terror, just ships against ships, and the Ottomans had more. The Byzantines were trapped. May 29, 1453, the final assault. Ottoman cannons breached the wall. 80,000 Ottoman soldiers poured into the city. 7,000 Byzantine defenders fought to the last. Emperor Constantine XI died on the walls, fighting, refusing to surrender. The Byzantine Empire ended. 1,123 years after Constantine founded Constantinople. And one of the reasons it fell? They had lost the weapon that saved them for 800 years. Now let's talk about what Greek fire actually was. Because even today we don't know for certain. The Byzantines succeeded in keeping it secret, even from history. We have descriptions from Byzantine sources, from Arab sources, from accounts of battles, but never the formula, never the exact recipe. Here's what we know. Greek fire was a liquid, probably petroleum-based. Byzantine sources mention naphtha, a highly flammable liquid petroleum distillate. It mentions quicklime, calcium oxide. When quicklime contacts water, it generates heat. Intense heat, hot enough to ignite petroleum. This would explain why Greek fire burned on water. The water triggered the quicklime. The quicklime ignited the naphtha. The naphtha floated and burned. Sulfur was probably included. It burns hot, produces toxic fumes, adds to the terror. Pine resin possibly, makes the mixture sticky, harder to remove, burns longer. Saltpeter maybe. Potassium nitrate provides oxygen. Makes fire burn even without air. But the exact ratios, unknown. The preparation method, unknown. The ignition system, partially known. The siphon was a bronze tube connected to a pressurized tank. The pressure came from a pump, manually operated, or possibly a bellows system. The mixture was heated before expulsion. When forced through the narrow siphon opening at high pressure, it atomized, became a spray. The friction or a pilot flame ignited it as it left the tube. The result was a stream of burning liquid, 50 to 60 feet range, devastating. Modern attempts to recreate Greek fire have been partially successful. Military historians and chemists have tried, using historical descriptions, mixing petroleum, quicklime, and sulfur, adding various other components. Some versions burn on water, some shoot from tubes, some are very effective, but none match all the historical descriptions perfectly. None last as long in storage, none have the exact properties described. The secret is still lost, and maybe that's fitting. Greek fire was a weapon of its time, a medieval superweapon, and ancient napalm. Today we have far worse. Napalm itself, white phosphorus, thermite. Greek fire would be obsolete, but in its time from 670 to 1200 it was the most terrifying weapon on earth, and it belonged to the Byzantines alone, and that monopoly gave them power, deterrence, survival. The loss of Greek fire is a lesson in institutional knowledge, in the fragility of secrets, in the danger of complacency. The Byzantines had an 800-year advantage. They protected it well, but protection requires continuous effort, continuous funding, continuous training, continuous use. When the empire stopped investing in the navy, stopped training siphonators, stopped producing Greek fire, they lost it, not all at once, gradually, a slow erosion. By the time they realized it was gone, it was too late. The knowledge was in the heads of men who were dead. The skills were in the hands of men who never trained successors. The written records, if any existed, were destroyed in 1204. And once lost, it couldn't be recovered, because the knowledge was too specialized, too secret, too fragmented. No single person knew everything. The chemist knew the formula, the siphonator knew the operation, the shipwright knew the siphon construction. When any link broke, the chain failed, and the weapon died. This happens in history repeatedly. Technologies are lost. The Romans made concrete that lasted 2,000 years. We only recently figured out how. The recipe was lost in the Middle Ages. Damascus steel forged into swords that were legendary, flexible, sharp, strong. The technique was lost in the 1700s. We still don't know exactly how they did it. Stradivarius violins, made in the 1600s. Sound quality unmatched. We've analyzed them. We can't replicate them. The technique died with the maker. And Greek fire, the Byzantine superweapon, lost in the chaos of 1204, never recovered, gone forever. You might think this is ancient history. Medieval technology, irrelevant today. Think again, the principle is the same. Strategic advantage through technology monopoly, and the danger of losing it. The United States has military technology advantages: stealth aircraft, precision-guided munitions, advanced radar, cyber warfare capabilities, nuclear weapons. These provide deterrence, security, power, but maintaining them requires investment, requires training, requires institutional knowledge. And that knowledge is fragile. Consider the F-22 Raptor, the most advanced fighter jet ever built. Production stopped in 2011. Why? Too expensive. But now the tooling is gone, the suppliers have moved on, the engineers have retired. If the US wanted to restart production, it would be difficult, expensive, maybe impossible. The knowledge is fragmenting. Or consider nuclear weapons. The US hasn't designed a new warhead since the 1990s. The engineers who designed the Cold War arsenal are retiring, dying. The new generation hasn't built a warhead from scratch. They maintain old ones. But do they have the deep knowledge, the institutional memory? Some worry we're losing it, like the Byzantines lost Greek fire. China is trying to steal US technology, cyber espionage, industrial espionage, technology transfer. Why? Because developing it yourself takes decades, but stealing it takes years. China doesn't want to spend 50 years catching up. They want the secrets now. And if the US loses its technological edge, what happens? The advantage disappears, deterrence weakens, security erodes, just like Byzantium in 1300. They had walls, they had ships, but they didn't have the weapon that made them invincible, and they fell. The US has carriers, has jets, has missiles. But if the technological edge is lost, if China or Russia catch up or surpass, the advantage is gone, and the consequences could be catastrophic. Greek fire kept the Byzantine Empire alive for 800 years. When they lost it, they lasted another 250 years. But they were vulnerable, weaker, eventually conquered. The weapon was gone, and so was their invincibility. Technology is power, but only if you keep it, only if you protect it, only if you invest in it, continuously. Because once lost, it might never come back. The Byzantine Empire lasted 1,123 years, longer than any empire in history except China. They survived because they adapted, they innovated, they defended, and they had Greek fire, the secret weapon that burned on water, that couldn't be extinguished, that terrified enemies for 800 years, but they lost it, through complacency, through neglect, through the chaos of war. And 250 years later the empire ended, the walls fell, the city burned. And the Ottomans took Constantinople. Greek fire would not have saved them in 1453. The Ottomans had cannons, guns, overwhelming numbers, but it would have helped. It would have destroyed the Ottoman fleet, giving Constantinople more time, more options, maybe enough to survive. We'll never know, because the secret was lost, and with it the Byzantine advantage. This is cinematic history tales, where empires fall, where technology is lost, where secrets die. And where history teaches us lessons we refuse to learn. Subscribe for more stories of innovation, loss, and the fragility of power. Because the Byzantines thought Greek fire would protect them forever. It didn't. Nothing lasts forever, not empires, not weapons, not secrets. Next time, the tulip mania, when a flower bulb cost more than a house. The first speculative bubble in history. See you then.